Well, Mac has sent the four of us ahead for our next experience, and weren't we delighted to turn up at the Seppelt Great Western Winery for a cellar door tour. We can't wait to meet our host Bruce and check this place out.
Now the couples are about to discover the extent of their experience as they enter the tasting room at the Seppelt Winery, their very own private tour of the Seppelt cellar door.
Yeah, well, welcome to Seppelt Great Western. Thank you. You know, you're at the birthplace of the Australian sparkling wine industry.
Oh, wow.
So what we're going to do is take you through some of the history of it, and ultimately in the underground cellars, which are the largest cellars in Australia.
Oh, nice.
All for the cellaring of sparkling wines.
Awesome.
So let's go.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
Let's do it.
Bruce started the tour in their museum, which is also the original shaft house, which he explained to the group.
So this is our little museum.
Yeah.
And around the wall here is a chronological history of how we were settled here. The building that you're in is called the shaft house, the shaft down to the underground cellars.
The shaft drops 8 metres down, and that's where the group is heading.
The reason behind this being named the shaft house is because it houses the shaft.
Yeah.
The Sinclairs and the Suttons took in a few more treasures like this bottle of wine from the 19th century. Then they stepped into the barrel room. Yep, that's about the right size for me.
Although there's nothing spectacular about the architecture, these barrels are over 100 years old.
Wow.
And they predate stainless steel, which is now what you use to store wine, but back then you could only store bulk wine in a barrel like this or in an underground tank.
The barrel room's also used as a function room, which can be booked for special events, made even more special by the history that surrounds you.
This wall was built in 1892.
Wow.
This was the cellars that were built by Hans Irvine. And so as we walk down into the cellar itself and look up, this whole cellar was built in Oregon timbers, and the Oregon timbers were imported directly from Oregon in the United States, so Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And if you look at this particular piece of timber, that all the way through is one continuous piece of timber.
Really?
As the tour continued, the group descended even further.
This is where the sparkling wine production really takes shape.
The production assembly is still set up just as it was in the 1800s, and Bruce went through the various stages where historical photos of past workers were taken right at this location.
This is called a riddling rack. The bottles come off the stack and are brought up here and progressively shaken and turned and brought more upright. And the objective is to get all of the yeast that's in the bottle out of suspension and into what's known as the cork plug.
Then the highlight of the tour took the group even further below into the cellar door.
And you're walking into real history here. So welcome to the famous Great Western underground cellars, known as the drives. The temperature down here is 15 degrees, and it's like that all year round. As we go here, these stacks of wine are as they were when this was a working winery. The entire cellars can house 3 million bottles of wine.
Wow.
And it's a bit like when you have a shed, when the shed's full, you just dug another drive.
Okay.
As they kept exploring, each drive seemed to have its own special secret.
This is a private cellar. This is the cellar of Ian Mackenzie. In here, he has got a collection of wines that are relevant to this winery, going back to as early as Hans Irvine's days.
Wow, really?
And the shaft house they were in earlier, this is where it ends up, 8 metres down.
The most famous one is the one right here, which is of Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser.
What goes down must come up, or so they say.
Now you can look.
Oh, yes.
And the history here is that that's where all the soil came out.
Okay.
Of course, our group couldn't pass up tasting some of the wines.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Thank you so much, Bruce.
That was excellent.
That's fantastic. I mean, we're on what's called the trip of a lifetime, and this has been a great part of it. It was absolutely incredible. So thanks for your time.